Well, welcome to the Valley Hoops Insider podcast website. I'm Harry Schrader. We're glad you're with us tonight. We would normally call this Voices of the Valley because we're talking to writers and people that cover the sport. But since we're talking about SLU basketball, maybe it shouldn't be Voices of the Valley. We'll have these guys come up with a title for it. Maybe it's the Stu and Carter Show. I don't know. We'll figure it all out in just a minute. But we wanted to dig into the St. Louis University basketball team. Some transition there with some of the big stars of the team graduating from a year ago, but plenty of talent left. Want to bring into the broadcast our friends Carter Chapley and Stu Durando. Carter with Danny Max Scoops. Danny Max Scoops. Am I saying that right? And then, of course, Stu from the Post-Dispatch. Let me bring them both back in by the miracle of hitting a button. And, guys, thanks for joining us. Carter, first, tell people about Danny Max Scoops. Am I saying that right? Danny Scoops Mac? No, what is it?
Scoops with Danny Mac.
I knew I was saying something wrong. Dan McLaughlin, wherever you are, I apologize.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think you'd let me get away with not correcting you on that.
Yeah, good. And so tell us about that site in general before we go into SLU stuff at all. I mean, you work for them. You will be writing for them as the season progresses. But tell us about that website in general.
Scoops is an awesome website if you're into everything St. Louis sports, Cardinals, Blues, Billikens, Tigers, Battlehawks. Anything that you can possibly imagine. They have focused on, golf. Gosh, they had tons of coverage for the Ascension Charity Open that was at Norwood Hills. It's just, I think they're trying to provide a lot of in-depth coverage, stuff that you might not have time for on Twitter. Got people with really great opinions, far greater than mine. Bernie Miklas writes every single day for free on that site, and that's worth the price of admission. So I hope I can contribute to it in a way that lives up to that name.
Stu Durando with the Post-Dispatch. Stu, how long for you at the Post?
25 years, like this month or last month, something in that range. But 25 years.
And you've covered it all, and you've ended up on the Billiken beat. But what else do you cover, like in a consistent way?
Oh God, I don't know if there's anything really consistent. It's just kind of a consistently inconsistent, between seasons. I just came off, as I told you, a weekend at drag racing, which came off a weekend at the Ascension Charity Classic, which came off a weekend out at the track again, covering IndyCar and NASCAR. And, so I've done some SLU soccer now that the season started, and they're doing really well. So it's a mishmash of things for about 7 months between the end of the season and the start of the season.
And you and I have been side by side at a lot of sporting events over the years, and been around a lot of different things. Before we get to Billikens, talk about just how you've seen journalism shift and change over the last 25 years or so.
Oh wow, that's like a whole show in itself.
Sure, it is.
But it's just, constant adaptation to what we're doing. And, it used to be, when Twitter first came out, or I remember it was the big question of, you think you have a story that no one else has. And it's like, do I put it on Twitter first, or do I wait and put it in the paper and make it, and hope that nobody else has it, and now it's just like, get it out there, whatever you got, get it out there and get it up as fast as possible.
Accuracy or not, who cares? Just as long as it's out there.
There is some of that. I try not to be in that camp, for sure. But that's obviously the biggest thing. It's just there's no waiting anymore. If you've got something, you throw it out there with sources, and it's just so it's like there's no more 9 to 5 work days or whatever the work days were. It's almost it's all waking hours are on the clock.
It is amazing the way those things have changed. So I wanted to have you guys on because you guys are what I would call the beat writers surrounding Billiken basketball. I've been at a lot of the games, I get to a lot of the Billiken stuff, but you guys are way closer to it than I. And Carter, first with you, obviously they lose Goodwin and French from last year. The big pieces of that really outstanding basketball team. So they have to rebuild, reshuffle, the way they approach things. But last year was a year I think that we would call disappointing, meaning COVID wreaked havoc with what was potentially going to be a great basketball season for the Billikens.
Yeah, it's really hard to take away anything from last year in terms of outcomes, just because they were so good pre-COVID in terms of when they all went on that big break. I think it was in January. And then they came out and they just were clearly not the same team. Something happened to them. And there have been stories about, how impacted guys were. And it's hard to translate that from, okay, so you were off for a month. What happened? Was it just momentum stopping? But I think with the team now, you now get an off season where there was hopefully some, relaxed restrictions, at least up until recently. Another opportunity to get into the weight room to get some normalcy back. And really now you have to live post Jordan, Goodwin, and Hassan French, and you got to look for leadership. And fortunately, this team has guys who've been around for a long time now.
Stu, Yuri Collins is a guy that, has just been really outstanding at delivering the basketball to the right guy at the right time. And I don't know that people really figured him to be that good coming out of St. Mary's High School. But if Carter's talking about looking for leadership, to have a point guard that can really run your offense and get the ball to the right guys, you do want to start at the point guard position, don't you?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think the leadership, as Carter was talking about, I mean, you lose Hassan and Jordan, and they were very vocal, especially Jordan. I mean, just very loud, verbal guys. And I think you're going to get it in different ways this year. I mean, there's still some guys on the roster who are, rah, loud, cheerful guys like Goodwin was. I mean, just always, but, Yuri and Javante, guys like that are a little more low key, the old cliche lead by example type of thing. But, Yuri sets a great example. And I think his first two seasons were obviously quite good. And they're going to be looking for him to really take the next step this year. Especially maybe with a little more scoring. I don't think we're ever going to see him scoring 14, 15 points a game, but, looking to score a little bit more, run the team. He's, 2 years now, so he should be at the top of his game in terms of running an offense.
When I think about this team, and we're going to break down the squad a little bit, but all the national publications talk about Javante Perkins Carter as being not only the Billiken's best player, but maybe the best player in the Atlantic 10 Conference. What can he do for an encore? I mean, 17 points a game or whatever it was a year ago, did a decent job on the boards, good shooting percentage. What can he take it to that proverbial next level?
I'd say that the way he takes it to the next level is probably in his efficiency. He took a lot of shots, and he's shown flashes of being a really efficient scorer, a guy who can go 7 for 7 from the field and a half, 10 for 14 in a game. But there are games where things break down on offense with this team, and you're going to look to someone who's going to need to take shots. Now, we know Javante's confident in being the number one option on offense, and so that's not a problem. But if you have a guy out there who's just putting up 30 shots a game, let's say, which isn't inconceivable with a guy like Javante, and he's not hitting them effectively, he can take the next step by becoming a facilitator, by being a decoy, by moving it to the other guys on the floor. So can he offensively take a next step? I mean, maybe he might be able to turn into a 25-point scorer. Gosh, he's shown every indication that he could be that guy. But I don't think he has to do that to become a more effective player.
And Stu, do you think he's a guy that was able to score, not at will, but very, relatively easily when people had to really pay attention to Haas in the post, and so much attention was being given to Goodwin, who if people don't know, has just a really significant shot of making the Washington Wizards. That's going to be exciting to pay attention to. Is Javante the kind of guy that can carry the load when everybody's thinking about Javante Perkins?
Sometimes. I think we saw him fade a little bit last year in terms of his shot, but he's really can be efficient. He can score a lot of points with very few shots. And there's nobody I've seen at SLU who scores in as many ways as he can. And that mid-range game he has developed is, no, I haven't seen that at SLU in a long time. And so that makes, he developed a 3-point shot that was way better than I expected it to be last year. He can get to the rim. He does it. It is kind of an effortless thing. Sometimes you just see it and it just looks, it's hard to actually describe it, but when you see it, and it's like, you sometimes say, God, he just made that look so easy. And no, he's just smooth and just does so many things. I don't know if I would ever see him scoring, 25 a game. He can certainly push 20, and he probably doesn't need to score, a ton. He's going to have his nights for sure. But I think there's a lot of guys on this team who can score. And if he's getting 18 to 20 a game on a regular basis, and the way he goes about it is just something that most teams don't have, especially in the A-10.
We'll talk more about some of the guys on the team as we get along, but what kind of work is Travis Ford going to have to do, Carter, to they got to remodel a little bit. I mean, because they were so Goodwin French oriented, and I know they've got, a big guy coming in as well, but they were so oriented that way. What's Travis's job in this offseason? Practice starts on Friday.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, last week as I kind of started working on season previews, is that you look at the last 2 years of this team, really, you have 4 of the 5 starters pretty much penned in every night. And then, of course, Travis likes to go with the exact same lineup pretty much every game. So you kind of pen it in and you know what you're going to get. You had Jordan, you had Yuri, you had Javonte, and you had Hassan and Gibson a lot of the time as well. But this year, you only really have 2 guys who you look at and you go, okay, those are guaranteed. Those are the guys I'm going to have on the floor for 30 minutes a night and probably more if I need them. And that's Yuri and Javonte. And so now you have 6 or 7, other guys to fill those other 3 roles who all do deserve playing time. And it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of combinations he finds and, chemistries and complements each other to make it all work. And I think it's going to take him a lot of time to get to that point where, because you have so many different combinations of things, every night it's going to be, okay, so this guy's working, this guy's not, you got to pull him, you got to substitute them there. And so finding a rhythm is going to be important because he's had so much stability for the last couple of years that now he's kind of floating off a little bit more now.
And Stu, I'm a big Terrence Hargrove guy. And, he's so energetic and so flamboyant. Is that kind of energy in the way he plays, is that a guy that can translate into 25 minutes a game and still be that same player, or is he going to have to adjust?
Everyone's waiting for him to have his breakout season. And he does have the personality, a little kind of Jordan-esque, I guess. You think, Carter? But he's just, he's the guy who brings the goofiness and the towel waving on the sidelines, and he's so enthusiastic about everything. This should be the year that he steps up, and I don't know if a breakout season is the way to describe it, but he can do a lot of things. He needs to play good defense to stay on the court, like everybody does. But, some guys you expect it regularly, and sometimes it comes and goes. But with the way he's developed his shot, I think this team has a lot of potential 3-point shooters. And when he gets going, I think he's become a really not elite shooter, but very strong perimeter shooter. And with that athleticism, he's going to be able to do a lot of things. And he's going to be counted on to fill in some of the rebounding. And play different roles and guard different positions and that type of thing. So he's a key in this rotation. There's no doubt. He should be. I don't know if he's going to be playing 25 a game, but I think a lot of that remains to be seen. As Carter was saying, I think early on you're going to see a rotation with a lot of people because we just don't know about some of these players and what they're going to be able to do and how they're going to fit in with the rest of the group.
Carter, there's a lot of talk in the college basketball circles and in the NBA as well about positionless players, meaning we don't have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got a bunch of guys that can dribble, pass, and shoot, and all those kinds of things. But what St. Louis has is a lot of overall size without having. They're not gigantic, but a whole lot of 6'4", 6'5", 6'6" guys, and that makes that positionless basketball possible for a team that maybe is going to be a little bit of plug and play for Travis Ford.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have kind of the anchors set, and we can talk about them a little bit more, but I would imagine you're going to see a lot of like Yuri Collins 1, Francis Okoro 5s, and then 3 guys of that positionless basketball that you talk about, guys who are both, like Gibson Jimerson 6'6", he can play, he can guard some taller guys if he can show a defensive, be keen on defense like that. Terrence Hargrove's like that. Fred Thatch is like that. Jordan Nesbitt. You got a lot of these guys who can play these 2, 3, 4 positions. And like Stu was saying, you have a bunch of guys in this team who can show 3-point shooting, which is so important to that positionless basketball. Because it's one thing to have space, it's another thing to be able to do anything with it. And I think this team is going to have that flexibility in terms of depth to be able to do it. And if one guy's not doing it on a specific night, you've got 2 transfers in maybe Rashad Williams. We still don't know about his waiver, and Deandre Jones from Central Arkansas, who are elite, nationally recognized 3-point shooters. So you're right. That positionless basketball is going to be really interesting for this team.
I like the possibility of. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, go ahead. Yeah,
but I like the possibility of them, trying something where he uses just a really small lineup, whatever that might be, with Hargrove and maybe Nesbitt and Yuri and Fred Thatch, and just see what they can do in spurts with a smaller athletic group. Not that the big guys aren't athletic, but I think some of the potential there is kind of. Maybe it flops and it doesn't work, but I'd certainly like to see him run 5 smaller guys out there at times and see how that works out.
Yeah,
you both.
And that's something that could. Oh,
go ahead, Carter.
Oh, I was gonna say, and that's something that could really work in A10 play, where only Richmond and St. Bonaventure really have like a true 5 in Oshuna and Grant Golden. Everyone else is kind of in that what I call Hassan French 5, which is like a 6'8" forward who kind of plays the center position because of their strength. But Terrence Hargrove is a energetic enough guy that you could send him out there against a lot of 5s and have him harass them enough to make it work. So I'm with you, Stu. That could be really, really exciting.
You both mentioned Fred Thatch, and there are times when Fred Thatch is almost like the best guy on the floor. He's the guy that's getting a loose ball, making a good pass, hitting a big shot, doing the right things. He is just a guy that has been, I don't even want to say a glue guy, but a guy that he's a good basketball player. And I think how they utilize Fred Thatch is really important.
Yeah. I can almost see him kind of like, Jordan was one of those guys who filled this, we always talked about him filling the stat sheet. So, he had points and rebounds. Obviously, sometimes he approached a triple-double. Sometimes he had 5 steals. Sometimes he blocked a couple of shots. Sometimes he had 6 or 7 turnovers. But he filled the stat sheet. And I think Fred can be a little bit like that. He's going to have to rebound a little bit. He's a smaller guy like Jordan, but I think he's going to rebound. He's such a big, strong 6'3", and he's the best leaper on the team, as far as I know, unless someone surpassed him. And I think he's really probably an underrated shooter when he gets his confidence going. And I think he looked at times really uncomfortable on offense last year. But I think toward the end of the year, he started showing a little bit more maybe confidence and ability to score. And I think we'll see his scoring maybe double this year.
So often when you're supposed to defer to the star on the team, you look uncomfortable, right? Because, I'm not supposed to shoot it. I'm supposed to make sure one of those other 3 guys gets the ball. That's my job. And so I think sometimes, you gain by losing, addition by subtraction, that some of these guys will blossom
Mhm.
without Goodwin and French around. Carter, Francis Okoro comes with some a good resume, coming from a Power 5 school. Tell us a little bit about that guy. You said that most nights probably we got a 1 and a 5 and the other guys, and he is that 5 and he's number 5, so that works good too.
Yeah, Francis is a interesting guy coming from Oregon. He played a huge role in their 2019 Sweet 16 run. That was the year that their starting center Bull was drafted in the second round, and he got hurt late in the season. And Francis came in, and they went on a 12-game winning streak that took them to the Sweet 16. So he doesn't light up the stat sheet, but he's a guy that does a lot of things that you want from a 5. He rebounds well. He's in the right places oftentimes. He plays strong defense. And what kind of goes underrated is he is coming off of a foot injury. He's coming off of a shoulder injury. In the middle of his last season at Oregon, he lost his father and had to go back to Nigeria, I believe it was. And this would be like 3 months before COVID shut down the whole world. So it's hard to know why exactly he didn't light up the stat sheet in his second year at Oregon. But he's an exciting player in that he's a true 6'11" center. He's a full-size center, which this team hasn't had. I mean, they had Jimmy Bell, who's no longer with the team, but even then last year with Martin Linson, he's not a true, he's 6'9", I think. So I think he's someone who can be really impactful in a conference, again, where I said earlier, you don't really have a whole lot of true 6'11" centers. You don't have a whole lot of guys who can, so he's not going to go up against a ton of guys in conference play who are going to be bigger than him.
When I think about this team in general, Stu, I'm so impressed by the way Travis Ford gets outstanding players from the local market. And one of those guys is Jordan Nesbitt, who's come back home. Now, he graduated, went to Memphis, 4-star guy and all of that. Now he's come back home. First, just the importance, I think, for the fan base to have St. Louis guys on this team.
Yeah, I think that's, the making that connection and using it as a marketing tool, especially when those guys are good players and good guys, is huge. And, there was kind of hit and miss over the years. I don't know, I go back, I got into town when Larry Hughes was a senior in high school, and obviously people latched onto that pretty heavily, and he was a bit above the talent level of most. But to have a lot of guys from the area who people have seen in high school or followed in the newspaper, it is definitely a good connecting point for people. And then, I haven't thought about it, but, there might be opportunities where you could have 5 guys on the floor. What could you do with that to get 5 St. Louis area guys on the floor? Yuri, Hargrove, we count Fred, Thatch. What am I missing here, Carter?
Well, like Nesbitt would be 4, and
Nesbitt, yeah,
Francis played for Brad Beal.
Yeah.
That's true.
Okoro played for Brad Beal.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah. I mean, you could have 5 guys who people are familiar with, not just from them showing up at SLU, but going back a few years. So it's a pretty cool thing.
And then either one of you weigh in on Nesbitt. What do we expect? I mean, here's a guy, like I said, he came out of high school with all these credentials, goes to Memphis, that's building this, it's a magnet for great players there at Memphis under Penny Hardaway. But he doesn't play much, didn't get involved much, and comes back home. Either one of you weigh in on Mr. Nesbitt. I think there's great potential there.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a guy who, if he was coming straight out of high school, would be seen as like a top recruit in the conference. One of those guys who makes all the lists as top, SLU gets top incoming recruit. I think he was ranked 70th or something in the country.
Something like that. Very high, yeah.
Right. And so I give a lot of credit to Jordan Nesbitt for wanting to go to school early, for leaving. He graduated high school a semester early so he could enroll in college. And I can imagine. I mean, I mean, I'm not too far removed from my college experience where you get to school and maybe it's not for you. Maybe something about it isn't for you. And I seem to remember that was the story on why he left. He knew right away that Memphis just wasn't the right spot, and he didn't get any playing time. And so all of a sudden, he's what would be a true freshman coming to SLU, but he has, I think an NIT championship with Memphis under his belt. So it's hard to know what went wrong there without being a fly on the wall. But I think if you were to believe the pre-Memphis hype about him, he can be an impact player right away, and you hope that he can be.
Yeah, that was just a hard situation because, as Carter explained, he goes down there at mid-season, which doesn't happen very often. And, you're trying to acclimate to college. You're trying to, get to know the guys who he probably knew a little bit, and then trying to break into the lineup, and people expect a lot out of you. And so they expect to see you on the floor, and he just wasn't he only played 3 or 4 games, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. And I think he knew, based on talking to his dad, that he probably wasn't in the right place and should have stayed home, maybe from the beginning. But it was something he learned from, and he doesn't lose any eligibility. So just an experience that you chalk up, and I think he's a potential starter here.
Yeah, I think he's got that kind of talent. And again, we talk about overall size. He's 6'4", 6'3", 6'5", something like that. So he's got the size, the body. He has the high school credentials. And again, I'm always a guy that loves to see local happen, and so seeing that as well is exciting.
They list him at 6'6".
Oh, really? That tall?
I need to look into that.
Yeah.
They listed Hassan a little larger than he was also.
Well, every team lies.
Yeah, everybody does.
So any of the new guys besides Okoro, Carter, that stick out to you? You mentioned Williams and Jones and maybe Strickland. Talk about some of those guys that, maybe first impressions, first thoughts.
Yeah, Rashad Williams is really interesting. He's still waiting on his transfer waiver because this would be his second transfer. So he wouldn't fall under all that transfer portal first waiver stuff. But I mean, this is the guy who led the NCAA in 3-point attempts last year. Like, his highlight tape at Oakland is just watching it's watching a guy who's a good 3-point shooter and doesn't have a whole lot else around him. And the coach goes, well, we need you to score. So he takes every shot available to him. And I think that's an interesting weapon to have on this team. But I'm curious to see if that kind of thing translates to where, no, you can't take, I think it's something like 270 3-pointers this year.
Yeah,
like
Travis gives his guys the green light, but he may be reined in a little bit. But when you note, 2 of his biggest games, if not his 2 biggest scoring games last season, were against Michigan State and Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
2 pretty decent teams. So, and he was coming off an injury, I think, in one of them. So when he gets going, there's another guy who gets rolling, and we just don't know how he's going to fit into this mix. I'm sure he's in the rotation to start and gets definitely his opportunities.
And I do think, Carter, that they'll eventually sign off on that. I mean, guys all over the country are getting signed off on because the first transfer was before the change. So this is actually just their first free agent transfer. What about Deandre Jones?
Well, SLU saw him last year. Did they see him 2 years, Carter? Yeah.
2 years. Yeah, twice.
Yeah, from Central Arkansas by way of, I believe, Boise, Idaho. And I assume he's your backup point guard. I mean, he's played point guard a lot of games in college basketball. He had a good game against SLU last year, and he's a point guard, but he's another guy who can shoot it and score. At least he did at the level he was playing at. So it's just another intriguing piece. I think Carter would agree. It's like he may end up playing 7 minutes a game, or he might really have some games where he's a dangerous weapon.
We could talk about a lot more guys, and I don't want to get hung up on just kind of listing a guy and having you guys just go, but But Linson, to me, is a player that I wonder about. Meaning they bring in Okoro. Linson got plenty of time last year. I mean, plenty, about 10, 12 minutes a game. But is he a guy that can stand up, is sturdy enough in the A10 night after night?
Yes.
I don't know if you need him to be. I think he is, but like for what you're asking. But I think he's your backup 5, and I think he knew that coming here. I mean, Francis was with the program last year. He spent the whole season. So when Martin signed, he knew where he stood. And I mean, I like Martin, if only because he does so many gritty little things night after night, just taking hard screens, moving the ball, going in, and I mean, if you want to call him a body bag for 5 fouls a night, I mean, he does that really, really well too. And I really like Martin. I think he's a very high end backup center.
Yeah, he was the biggest surprise on the team last year. I didn't know what to expect from him, and he played in that second game of the season. He played in place of Hassan, and they beat LSU. Now that's saying something.
Sure.
And then he continued to have a big role throughout the season, and I mean he was efficient. I think he's really fundamentally sound. He shoots a high percentage. He's not going to grab you 8 or 9 rebounds a game. He's not that Hassan kind of guy, but he plays. There were 1 or 2 games where he was really key down the stretch on defense. I think he's really effective.
Before I let you guys go, I want to talk about maybe the biggest challenges for Travis Ford, and it might be, the loss of one of his coaches, one of his relatives, heading in, in the off season and all of that. But so I want to talk about that in just a moment. But when I look at the schedule, and they do have some extremely easy games, but then you've got Memphis, you've got, when they go on the road for that Cancun Challenge, you've got some opportunities. Auburn later in the season. Drake, do you like the schedule? Do you like the way it breaks down?
Well, I don't know if Carter would agree. I think this is the best schedule. I mean, last year they were supposed to play some teams they didn't play, and that probably would have been. But this, I think, consistently up and down with Drake and Boise State and UAB was a 20-win team.
Missouri Valley's Belmont.
Yes, Missouri Valley's Belmont.
Missouri Valley's Belmont.
I think this is a really good schedule. It poses a lot of problems for a team that's got to figure some things out with guys that aren't coming back.
Carter, your thoughts on the schedule? Same thing.
Well, yeah, I think the only real cakewalk you have is those first 4 nights before you go to Memphis, where you play 2 exhibitions and Harris Stowe and Central Arkansas. I think is the those first 4 games, and I think that's where Travis can really spend some time tinkering with the lineups and seeing, not maybe not everyone gets 30. Anybody gets 30 minutes a night, but everyone gets 18 or something, and just see what lineups work. What before you go into what could be the best, most highly ranked game SLU has played since what, Duke, when they were number 1 or number 2. I mean, it's possible considering how highly ranked Memphis could be. Yeah, I mean, every game down the schedule after that first week is it going to be a competitive game. I'm not a big gambler, but I think that's one of those games where you one of those things where you see like the spreads being like 5 or 6 or 7 points every night, like it's close. So I think Travis has learned from mistakes of years past where maybe you don't play as many good games on the road even in your scheduling. You schedule all these big games and maybe you lose 2 of 3 to Drake, Auburn, and Memphis, but you beat one of them, and that goes a lot farther because you've played a lot of good teams rather than playing nobodies and losing your only big games.
So when I think forward into the A10 season and all that, and the preseason magazines are saying the Billikens are going to be 3, 4, 5 in the A10, is that a reasonable spot for Travis Ford's remaking of this team and the talent level based on what you guys can maybe remember and project into the A10 from last year?
I would say if they're being picked, I mean, they're going to be picked behind St. Bonaventure and Richmond in almost anything. And then you can throw a bunch of teams probably in a hat and, as often happens, and, they all end up beating each other up a little bit. But for that, I think there are, another top 4 finish is definitely in the cards. And we just don't know as much about this team as we did the last 2 years going into the season when everyone expected them to compete for the championship. So to have to be reshuffling a little bit and be considered a top 4 team is a pretty good situation, I would say, going into the season.
Carter, thoughts?
I agree entirely. I think the conference has gotten better. I think St. Bonaventure is going to be really good. Richmond's going to be really good. And then there's a gap, and then there's SLU, Dayton, Davidson, VCU,
VCU,
and then
Rhode
Island, and then even after that, you have teams like George Mason's brought in Kim English to coach that team, and they're looking really good. You've got UMass, who's trying to survive post Trey Mitchell, but they still have a pretty good. I mean, I think more than anything, it's going to be a year where the mid pack of the conference is going to raise the profile, and that's a good thing. That can only be good.
Final thoughts. You joked about the Missouri Valley's Belmont, Carter. That news breaks today, and it's been coming out for a week, but they finally have the announcement today, and it makes me think about realignment. And of course, a lot of people said, "Well, SLU should go to the Missouri Valley," which they will never do. But I do think there is still that longing on West Pine and in that community to be in the Big East. Do we think realignment will ever reach that arena to where SLU actually ends up getting to go to the conference they really want to play in?
Go for it, Carter.
Not anytime soon. Not anytime soon. Unless some major cataclysmic change happens where the Big East breaks up and creates something new. I think an athletic writer wrote something about the Catholic 10, which I thought was kind of fun. But I think it's probably in SLU's best interest and in SLU's fans' best interest to worry about improving the profile of the A10 more than going elsewhere. I think they're in a pretty good home right now, all things considered. I mean, just seeing how the American just collapsed in a manner of days, and I mean now Memphis is without a home, and SMU as well. So unless they ended up in the Big 12 as well, which I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, I think I really wanted Belmont to come to the A10. I thought they would have been a great add to the A10. Give more regionality for St. Louis to go somewhere.
Good trip.
Absolutely, I wanted Belmont and Loyola to join the West Coast Conference of the A10. So I'm happy for Arch Madness because that'll make that event so much more fun with Belmont there. But I wanted the Bruins in the A10.
And I think the idea of the all Catholic conference that's gone on since I was in St. Louis, and probably long before that, was a great idea that just never wasn't going to happen. But I mean, the collection of teams you could have had in a league like
really
that
good.
would have been that would have been a fun league.
And Stu, for the casual college basketball fan, they don't really know how good the Atlantic 10 is, do they? I mean, there's years when you're going to be up and down, but it's a good, solid basketball league.
It's right now, I'd say that's probably a good description. Good, solid league that has had better days. And it's had probably worse days, but they're trying to get back to that point where people aren't talking in February about, well, can the A10 get a third team in? They want to get back to the days where can the A10 get a fifth or sixth team in? And, right now they're not there. I think this is going to be a good season. There's a lot of players back that were very good, that have a lot of experience. And, but I don't know that we're going to be yet at the point where we're looking at, a 4 or 5 teams in the NCAA tournament. It would be nice.
3-bid league. It's a 3-bid league.
3-bid league.
That's worth a lot of money. That's a good thing.
Yeah, yep.
3's not bad. It's better than 2.
Better than
Not
1.
as good as 6. I think they have 6
Several
back in the day.
I think that was the peak. Yeah.
If there was a conference that I remember when the Missouri Valley and the Mountain West had a thing, and like the Big East will play somebody, Southeast Conference will play the Big 12 or whatever it might be. Is there a league that you think is comparable, meaning like equal to the A10, that would be a logical connection if they were going to come up with some kind of a challenge like that, league versus league?
Well, you know what this one is, I think, Cara. Well, it almost happened.
Well, they had it scheduled up until this year. It was the Mountain West, wasn't it? That's who they scheduled, and SLU was supposed to play.
San Diego State last year.
San Diego State, the Aztecs.
Would have been a great game.
Oh my gosh, it would have been on. I think it was like on Christmas, on like the day before Christmas or something like that. It was
pre-COVID outbreak for SLU.
Yeah. So that would be a fun one, I think. Gosh, other than that, I mean, it's hard to know who's out there that would want one. I'd love to see one against like the Big East. Like, I think that would be something that you could have a lot of fun with in having the higher end teams in the conference prove themselves against some of the higher end teams of the Big East year after year. I think that would. Now, I don't think the Big East would ever do that because they don't want to ever suggest the idea that the A10 is better than they are. But yeah, the Mountain West is. I'm really disappointed that never matriculated.
I think the West Coast Conference would make some good matchups as well. I mean, it would never happen. But see Gonzaga playing someone and St. Mary's, and there's a bunch of other teams in that league that are very competitive. Of course, they're not going to come to mind off the top of my head, but San Francisco was pretty good. San Francisco was pretty good last year. BYU. The top of that conference is very strong, could make for some good games. But
well, gentlemen, I've kept you online way too long. I apologize, but I appreciate the time tonight. Stu Durando of the Post-Dispatch. What's the next piece of literature that you'll be producing for the Post-Dispatch?
Me?
Yes, you.
At this point, I don't. I wrote something about Belmont today for tomorrow's paper.
There you go. You and I were on that press conference today.
Get that covered. I'm done with my trips to the auto racing world for 2021, and I think I'm done with my golf coverage. So I think it's pretty much basketball and soccer from here on out.
And listen, in St. Louis, we love our own. Tell folks what your son's up to. I know he's really just growing and prospering in the business.
Thanks for mentioning him. Bennett's was a Mizzou journalism grad, and he just it's been almost 2 months now, started a job in Auburn, Alabama, covering Auburn athletics for the USA Today network.
It's awesome.
And the newspaper down there in Montgomery, Alabama.
Will he be coming up here to cover the game here?
The SLU Auburn game.
I'm counting on it. It's got a place to stay.
I was going to say, he's got free room and board.
There's no expense there. Just has to get here.
There you go. And then Carter, writing for Scoops with Danny Mac. You guys will be starting to produce Billiken stuff down the road a little bit. But I just think that is such a unique niche that Danny's put together. And he's got great quality guys like yourself and others that are providing unique coverage to each one of the different sports.
I'm very grateful that Danny's been courageous enough to believe in me to do this job, and I can only hope I come through, considering my direct counterpart on the Cardinals side is Bernie Miklas. So I try and remember that whenever I'm writing, that is this something Bernie would write, and usually the answer is no, but I try my best.
Carter's threatening to put out 10,000 word preview on the
Billiken,
which I cannot keep up with.
I have it right here. It's 22 pages, and it has a table of contents. It's in editing. Now, I don't know if that's going to come out all at once, but when it all does come out, it might come out in multiple segments just to keep Stu's attention. I'll release a PDF of it if that's what people want.
I look forward to it.
That'd be spectacular. Guys, I appreciate your time tonight talking Billiken basketball. Billiken should be good. They start practice this Friday, and and for real, obviously they've had workouts and so forth, but real practice starts this Friday. Appreciate you folks tuning in to our podcast tonight here on valleyhoopsinsider.com. I'm Harry Schrader reminding you, since you've been there, make it a better place. We'll see you again real soon. Carter, Stu, thanks so much.
Thanks, Harry. Good
Thank
to see
you,
Carter.
Good to see you.